Good morning to everybody. Welcome to the Remedial Law third class for those who are going to appear on 27 September 2021 examination. And today that I am dealing the continuation from the defamation, and please read what I posted on the screen so that I could get the confirmation that you are with me and I am with you. Yes, please. Quick. What I posted on the screen, please unmute and read.
World Pharmacist Day will be celebrated on 25th September 2021 to celebrate and recognize the important role pharmacists play. The World Pharmacist Day theme 2021 is Pharmacy, always trusted for your health. International Pharmaceutical Federation established the World Pharmacist Day. FIP is a global federation of National Association of Pharmacists and Pharmaceutical Scientists came into existence on September 25th, 1912. The FIP Council is Istanbul, Turkey in 2009 suggested to observe the Pharmacist Day on September 25th because on this day FIP came into existence. Hence we celebrate World Pharmacist Day on 25th September every year across the world.
Professor Dr. Muhammad Sahab Hussain, compiled by. Yes, anyway, it gives a sense that today is the Pharmacist Day, that is the 25th September, and let us go to our remaining portion there. We have started measure of the damages in the defamatory publication. How the damages will be measured. That we will see in this class. Can you read it? What I put it there?
The court must take the following things into consideration while deciding the question of compensation in a defamatory publication.
Good.
First one is the conduct of the plaintiff.
Nice.
Second one is position and standing in society, the nature of libel, the absence of libel. Sorry.
How do you pronounce
the nature of the absence of refusal of any of any detection of
libel
or apology of libel.
Yeah.
The whole conduct of the defendant from the date of publication of libel of the date of the decree.
Yes, these are the grounds where the defamatory publication will be measured. Number one, the conduct of the plaintiff. How the conduct of the plaintiff would be also taken into consideration, whether a genuine person, whether he is a philanthropist, and what nature that he is having, and a person who files a case against another person for the defamation. Next two is that the position and standing in society. What his position would be there and the standing in society. Either the plaintiff is concerned or the defendant is concerned. Because the defendant, the plaintiff here, person who defamed is the plaintiff. Then what his position would be there, that will be counted. And the nature of the libel and what type of the language is used over there, that also taken into consideration. If the very obscene language would be there, naturally the depth of the language and the magnitude of the offense is increased at the time, the damage is also increased more. Suppose if you make a defamation to a rickshaw puller, if you make a defamation to a collector, then how do you find the difference? Where the damages is awarded more? Yes, tell me.
In case affected by the like any collectors and anyone, so we go for the district courts or anyone.
Because the collector is suppose a defamatory matter is made to a rickshaw puller, and another defamatory matter made to a collector, where the
voice is not audible.
More awarded. That's my question.
So voice is breaking, sir. The voice is not audible.
Pardon?
The voice is not audible.
Damages are awarded for the defamation. See, if a rickshaw puller, he is having a small status, hence the damages are very less. Collector, he is having the high position, and hence his damages are more. Because I told you in that, number two, his position and standing in society. The damages are increased, damages are decreased. Are you following me?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So now you know the difference. If you make a defamation to a rickshaw puller, the same defamation if you make to a collector, where the damages are awarded more? Yes. Damages
position
are awarded more to the collector because his position and standing in society is
standing in the
high.
society.
I want to expect the answer from you, but you are not giving the answer to me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The absence of the refusal of any retraction of the apology are legal. Suppose if they made the apology, at the time it will be reduced. Even damages are reduced. Sometimes it will be no more damages because he said the apology later on. Like we have seen the apology in the Arun Jaitley versus Kejaria case law that we saw it. And these 5 people, Kejaria people, they made the apology. At the time, the court dismissed the case. Okay, then here we will see the Gorantla Venkateshwarlu versus B. Demudu case law. That is the AP case law. Respondent was a bank officer and was sent on a deputation to work as the managing director of the cooperative society. The appellant, the president of the society, sent a complaint to the bank alleging that the respondent had illicit connection with the ladies with affected the image of the society and during his tenure as a managing director. So when he's the managing director at the time that he is having the illegitimate intimacy with the staff or the ladies over there, such a defamatory matter is written by the president of the society to the bank manager. Of course, to the person managing director. Of course, managing director has given the response. There is no such a thing. It is only the fake news and it is a bogus news. There is no falsehood. There is a falsehood would be there. Again, he wrote to the that is the manager of the bank. The manager of the bank also says there is a false information. And with that, the person, the president who wrote such a letter, defamatory letter to the manager or the managing director, it amount to the defamation. The respondent filed a suit defamation claiming damages for 20,000. The court held that the allegation were per se defamatory and the appellant was liable to pay the damages because there is no truth at all. However, the court considered the fact that the allegations were made known only to the staff and bank because he wrote a letter to the bank and only the staff could know it. That means there is no wide publicity would be there. The appeal is allowed in part and the appellant is directed to pay only 15,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees less because there is no wide publicity. It is the letter is written by the president of the society only to the manager of the bank and only the bank and the other staff could know this information. So the publication is very much less, hence 5,000 is deducted, only 15,000 is awarded for the damages. That is with the 6% per annum from the date of the suit till the date of payment. The interest also put over there. Parties are directed to bear their own cost in the appeal. The parties are not given because appeal they have to bear it their own cost. Sometimes the court also give the money for the cost of the appeal also to the defendant. Yeah. So now the English law, we will see that how the libel and slander would be there. Under English criminal law, libel is treated as a crime, but slander is not. Slander is a civil wrong. And slander is only a civil wrong. This distinction between the libel and slander mainly in 2 reasons. Number 1, under criminal law, only libel has been recognized as an offense. A slander is no offense. Under the criminal law, it is only a civil offense as per the English law is concerned. Under the law of torts, slander is a actionable. Even slander is actionable in the English law per se, except in the few cases where special damages are to be proved. Of course, the slander, the special damages are to be proved, then only it become the civil wrong. But in certain cases, libel is always actionable without a proof also. And however, slander is actionable in the following 4 cases. Even if slander is also actionable in the 4 cases, then it will be treated, then there is a actionable per se it is if a person made such a brought into the 4 exceptions. What are the 4 exceptions? Can we read the first imputation? Anyone? The first imputation is here. I am showing the cursor. Yes? Any person can unmute and read. So here the imputation of a criminal offense to the plaintiff, number 1. Number 2, imputation of an infectious disease to the plaintiff, which has the effect of preventing the others from associating with the plaintiff. Example, A makes a statement in this office and his colleague is suffering from AIDS. He can here be liable for the damage, defaming his colleagues, even though it is a false information. Such imputation should not be supposed to made it. It is an actionable per se. And the third one is the imputation that a person is incompetent or dishonest or unfit regard to the office or profession or trade or business or carried over by him. If any person make such a statement orally, even though it is actionable per se, the statement itself is said to be the slander. There is no proof should be there. The slander is happened, and even the action itself it is enough. That is amount to the actionable per se. The last one is imputation of unchastity are related to any woman or a girl. If you make an imputation on the unchastity are related to a woman or a girl, that also there need not to prove any special damages over there. The act itself is actionable per se, or rather we can use like that res ipsa like vitar, the action itself for speak for itself. That way we can make it out. Now let us see the Indian law, how it can made it. The Indian law on libel and slander goes in this way. Unlike the English law, the Indian law does not make any distinction between the libel and slander. Both are treated as a criminal offense. In Indian law, there is no criminal law and there is no civil wrong. Both are treated as a criminal wrong under section 499 IPC. Of course, it is having the 10 exceptions that we discussed yesterday. In the case, let me see, Hirabai Jahangir versus Jinsha Dulji, the Bombay and Madras High Court both held that no distinction need to be made between the treating libel and slander. Both are criminal offenses. That is the Indian law position. Now let us see the short question. Sometimes it may be asked innuendo. Spelling is INNUENDO. That is the innuendo. So a statement in a prima facie defamatory when it is natural and obvious meaning leads to that conclusion. Sometimes it may happen that the statement with the prima facie innocent, but because of some secondary meaning, it may be considered to be the defamatory. For this secondary instance, plaintiff must prove the secondary meaning, that is the innuendo, which makes the statement defamatory. If you see the primary meaning, it is not amount to the defamation. If you read the secondary meaning, or we can say that if you read between the lines, the secondary meaning will come out, then it is amount to the defamation, that is called innuendo. Let us see the illustration, how it would be. In the illustration, Z makes a statement that X is an honest person and he never stole my watch. That means earlier he used to steal. That is the meaning. Now, the statement is first instance may be innocent, but it can be defamatory if the person to whom it was made, if the interprets from him that X is a dishonest person having a stolen that watch earlier. But now he is not stealing. Means earlier he used to steal such a watch says. So that is the second meaning that is said to be the innuendo. So defamation for the class of persons, I told you in the yesterday also, if a particular person is defamed over there, then it is a motive defamation. But the class of persons is there it is not specified which person it is made over there. At the time, it is not a motive defamation. Like the example which I have given is all liars are liars. One example that I made it. Then the doctors, here I give the another example is all doctors are thieves. And of course, these are all illustrations where they not refer to a particular person, it is referred to the whole class, and it's said to be the fair comment also. The situation will be different if a person wrote, all doctors of Crescent Hospital are thieves. Then doctors of the Crescent Hospital, because that is a particular hospital, all doctors can file a suit him for the defaming them. Because here the name is specified, Crescent Hospital. Those who are working under the Crescent Hospital doctors, it refers to them, even though they are the 4, 5, 10 or 100. Because specifically it is mentioned to the all 100 doctors, those who are working in the Crescent Hospital. So it is amount to defamation. So communication between the husband and wife. Yes, we have seen one of the case law, DJ Ponnan versus MC Varghese, because the wife and husband said to be the both sides of the same coin, and they are not the two entities. Hence, there is no publication. We can make it out when it is made between the husband and wife. Suppose the husband and wife made the divorce at the time they are becomes a two entities, or the legal separations are there, then become the two entity. Then a husband who wrote a letter to the wife regarding the father-in-law obscene language, if the wife shown to the father at that instance, it is amount to the publication, then one can be held liable. But in this regard, section 122 of the Evidence Act also says that communication between the wife and husband is not a publication, and it is not a defamatory, even though there is such words are referred by the husband to the wife about the father-in-law. So that is, it will not attract the the section 499 of the IPC, as well as because as by virtue of the 122 of the Evidence Act 1872, the husband and wife communication is one entity. It's not a privileged communication, and they do have such a right to do so. So let us see the defenses available against the defamation. Then what are the defenses? One is the justification by the truth, and here truth is not absolute defense. It is only a partial defense. We are not supposed to make such a thing. And for instance, X makes a statement in an interview about why indulging in a gambling and why files a suit against him. If X is liable to justify, prove it, then Y's claim will be dismissed. Naturally, a person who makes such an allegation, he has to prove it. That is observed in the Radheshyam Tiwari versus Eknath. The defendant was made unable to prove the facts published by him, therefore filed liable for the defamation. A person who makes such an allegation and he has to prove it, that is the truth, and then only it can be applied, the justification by truth. Otherwise, it is amount to a defamation. Now let us go to the second defense is fair and bona fide comment. Fair comment, you can make it bona fidely, that you can make it like a fair comment would be there, that I told you that all doctors are thieves. At the fair comment. And all politicians are corrupt. It is a fair comment. All liars are liars. It is a fair comment. So because there is no such a specifically mentioned to which one it refers over there, there is a fair comment. So this defense is based on public policy also, which gives every person is a right to comment and criticize without any malicious intention. The work or the activities of public officers or actors or authors or the athletes, as well as those who carry this based on public attention. So at the time that you can make a fair comment, because in this series, the so and so person did not play well and he missed many chances. Perhaps he is biased in playing over there. So such a comment would be there because it's a public office and it attracts the public attention. Would be there. There you can make a fair comment, but it's not referred to his particular fact. Let me see. Any fair and honest opinion on a matter of the public interest is also protected, even though it is not true. Even though it is not true, fair comment, you can make it out. There is no definition of a matter of public interest. Generally, a matter of public interest can, a subject which invites the public attention is often a public discussion or a criticism. Let us see that the main principle relating the defense of the fair comment have been stated by the Duncan and the Nail as follows. What is said to the fair comment and what is the based on it? We can say it's the fair comment. Number one, that is the A. The comment should be on a matter of public interest. Whatever that you make a comment, it should be of a public interest, not a particular individual regarding his personality is concerned, or legally his affair is concerned, regarding his conduct is concerned. Yes, number two, that is the B. The comment must be based on facts. There should be the facts based on comment. At that instance, the principle relating the fair comment will be applicable over there. Number C, the comment through it can include interference of the fact must be recognizable as a comment. It should be recognized that what the comment would be said, a comment, then only that fair comment defense would be available. Number D, the comment must satisfy the following objective tests. Could any man honestly express the opinion of the proved fact? So honestly that he has to express the opinion of the true fact, then only that would be available. Number E, even though the comment satisfies the objective test of the defense, can be defeated if the plaintiff proves that the defendant was actuated with express malice. Suppose if the comment is actuated with the malice, at the time the fair comment will not be a defense over there. So these are the five defenses, our five conditions should be there to claim the fair defense. The same approach is followed in India. Any matter subject which attracts the public attention and is a matter of public interest. For example, let us see. A puts the allegation on B for being the corrupt in a newspaper. So he published in the newspaper alleging that on B that he is a corrupt. Who did it? A did it. If A is not able to prove the allegations were true, it is he who made such an allegation has to prove the true, then his comment will not be considered a fair comment. Suppose he will not prove it, then his comment will not be considered as a fair comment. The person who makes such an allegation should have to prove it. That's what I want to make it clear to you. Yes, is it clear? Okay. Next, let us see fair comment and justification distinguished. The plea of the fair comment is available only in respect of both the facts and opinion. It is not necessary to prove truth of the comment. With the Justification is pleaded in the respect of the matter of the opinion. The defendant must prove not only that he honestly held the view expressed, but also they were accurate. So fair comment and justification, it is distinguished between them. It is very much clear how the plea for the fair comment is only in respect of both the facts and opinion. The fair comment we can make it out, only the facts and opinion is there. And it is not necessary to prove the truth and of the comment. When justification is pleaded in the respective matter of the opinion, the defendant must prove not only that they honestly held the view and expressed, but also they were accurate. So justification would be there. Both of them they have to prove that it is expressed in view honestly and accurately that he made. That is the distinction between a fair comment and justification. What is absolute privilege? Only, yes, I told you that earlier classes, absolute privilege will be a defense available for the judicial proceedings and parliamentary proceedings, this thing. And also that made number one during the judicial proceeding, number two by the government officials, number three by the legislature during the debate in the parliament, number four during the political speeches in the parliament proceedings. Again, it refers to parliament. Then the communication between the spouses also said to be the privileged one. Of course, there is a qualified privilege will come. So parliamentary proceedings, Article 15, Article 105, Sub-Article 2 of the Indian Constitution gives the immunity to parliamentarian to speak anything during the course of the business of parliament, and no action would be lie against them, because there is a statutory, right would be given over there to use the language in the parliamentary sessions, and it's not amount to defamation. Then judicial proceedings, yes, the protection has been given to the judges under the Judicial Officer Protection Act of 1850. Then it also extends the counsels and witnesses and parties to a suit where a judge could use such a defamatory statement also. I believe that your witness is not worthy enough. I believe that you are an idiot. If a judge will say such a word also, it's not amount to defamation, because he will be protected under the Judicial Officer Protection Act of 1850. So that is the absolute privilege would be there in those, especially the parliamentary proceedings and state proceedings and government proceedings and judicial proceedings. Then now let us come to the qualified privileges concern. Yes, in this qualified privilege, there is the wife and husband is a qualified privilege. That case law is the T.J. Ponnan versus M.C. Varghese. We have studied and held that the letter sent by the husband to his wife, which contains the defamatory, but the father-in-law does not. In a case of the defamation, it is a privileged communication between the spouses as per the section 122 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872. Yes, another case like was the Chatterson versus Secretary of State for India. It was held that the letters from the Secretary of State of India to his parliamentary under secretary providing the materials for the answer to the parliamentary questions was absolutely privileged. Yes, of course, here I have given the parliamentary privilege in the Indian Constitution, especially the Article 19, Sub-Article 1, Clause A of the freedom in Article 105 and 194 were specifically for the members of the parliament is subject to the rules and others which regulate the parliamentary proceedings. So that is constitutional safeguard would be there. Of course, it is not absolute. What is stated in the Article 19 clause or Sub-Article 1 and Clause A does not protect an individual absolutely for the what he says is subject to the reasonable restrictions which is provided over there in the Article 19, Sub-Article 2 of the Indian Constitution. And the freedom of speech in Article 105 state that the member of the parliament shall not be liable to any proceedings, civil or criminal, in account of the statement made in the debates of the parliament. Yes, that we have seen just before. Let us see the one of the case law is the P.V. Narasimha Rao versus State of JMM bribery case law. The apex court held that the privileged in the Article 105 sub Article 2, which gives the immunity from the court proceeding extent even taking the bribes by the members of the parliament for the purpose of voting the particular manner in parliament. Yes, this is the remarkable case law where it say it is not amount to the defamation, because there is a privilege is given over there. At that instant, if you made such a statement over there, the parliament has taken the bribe. Yes, qualified privilege will be applicable in the cases like here I have given the 6, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 1, reference for a job applicant. Suppose the reference would be there. If a person is asked for the reference earlier where he worked over, and if he gives such a remarkable defamatory words over there, that will be comes under the qualified privilege. It is not amount to the defamation, because whatever your conduct would be there, that is put it in writing by the earlier that is a former employer to the present employer. Yes, that is number one. Number two, answering the police inquiries. Yes, if you answering the police inquiries, if you use any other thing which is said exactly over there, that is not able to defamation because of qualified privilege will be there. Number three, a fair criticism of a published book or a film in a review. Yes, you can make a review to the book, and the book review is referred to the book, not to the author. So that is the point one should have to keep in mind. Number four, communication between the parents and teachers. Yes, if the teacher writes your boy is very naughty, very silly, very what I say, he's a sadist and he's pinching the girls and is making the many bullying the girls and bullying the boys also. At that instance, it is not a more defamation because the actual character of a boy is depicted by the teacher to the parent. Number five, communication between the employer and employees. Yes. If the communication between the employer and employees is said to be a privileged communication, then it's not amount to defamation. Number six, communication between the traders and the credit agency and all our relations are protected with the qualified privilege. In the agencies and the trade and the communication between them, and these are protected by the qualified privilege. If you see the, for example, a teacher tells the parents about the child's habit of stealing and warns them, in this case, the teacher can take the defense of the qualified privilege as he made the statement in good faith and in the interest of the child. Yes, that is the primary important. And we do have one more case law also. Suppose a discipline not only in the only school, discipline maybe out of the school also. Because in the school premises, you are not supposed to smoke. The discipline is not only restricted to school. A teacher can punish a student if a student found outside the premises of the school smoking a cigarette. Yes. Answer is yes. So such a thing would be there. Let us see what is the distinction between absolute and privilege and qualified privilege. And here we will see the defendant can avail this defense even when he was made the false and defamatory statement deliberately and maliciously. Even so, deliberately, maliciously, you made like a parliamentary proceedings or the judicial proceedings, that is the absolute privilege. But in a qualified privilege, the defendant can avail his defense only when he made a false and defamatory statement deliberately, but without malice. Here, the malice would not be there in the qualified privilege. If the malice is there, the defense is not available. Then we can see in the qualified privilege, absolute privilege, it can be used as a defense in the parliamentary, judicial, naval, military, and state proceedings. Yes, it is true. Judicial, naval, military, state proceedings, we have parliamentary proceedings. This absolute privilege is applicable over there. It can be, now come to the qualified privilege, it can be used only the defense in the communication made between the made in the course of the legal and social and moral duty for self-production and for production of the common interest and for the public good. At that instant, this qualified privilege can be used over there. So now let us see what is the statement of opinion. If the statement of made is an opinion, not a statement of fact, then it cannot be defamatory. So he has expressed the opinion and not the statement of fact, then it cannot be defamatory. For example, if a person says that he finds an actor ugly, I repeat, for example, if a person says that he finds an actor ugly, the statement is just an opinion and it is not defamatory. However, if he says that the actor is a drug addict or has had multiple affairs, then it will be a defamatory statement because it refers to the conduct of a person, the fact. In the statement results into the actor and losing the work or his job or the statement made a false, and there shall be a case of defamation. If you say that a actor is a addict of a drug and which in truth it is not, then people will believe that he is the addict and people will give the less chance to him in their movies to be an actor. That's a person who made such a statement, which is said to be the false. At that instant, the actor can bring an action against him. That is a motive defamation. Next, consent. If the plaintiff consent to the statement made, then there is no defamation. Suppose if they agree it, and for instance, if you take a big actor is smoking a BD, of course, he has given his consent to show it, and he's showing it, he picturized it, and made it an advertisement for the selling of these BDs are concerned. At that instant, the consent of the plaintiff gives the absolute privilege to the publisher. Yes, it is immaterial whether the plaintiff knew that the information approved for the publication was defamatory or not. Consent may be given by the words or he can say directly, or put it in writing, or by the action, including the inactions. And if the consent is obtained fraudulently, of course, it is not able to be consent from a person of unsound mind, then it will be invalid. The consent should be a free consent. That idea should be what I want to impress upon you. Next comes the censor passed in good faith by person having a lawful authority. Most of the movies, it is more obscenity and sex is shown over there. The Central Board of Film Industry, Film Board, they have censored certain of the portions and scenes also at the interest of the public to see that more obscenity will not be seen over there. Um, so naturally, at that times, a person can censor it. Like that, we say it is not a defamation of a person having over another authority, either conferred by the law or arising out of the lawful contract made with another person in a good faith, any censor on the conduct of the other matters which such a lawful authority relates. Yes, one can censor it. For instance, you take a judge censoring the conduct of the witnesses, or a banker censoring the cashier of a bank. An engineer submits a report to municipality that the contractor had taken away the stock of metal. So if the engineer had made a report in good faith, then he will not be liable for the defamation. So he can write it exactly, or he can censor it also. And when you censor it, make an application, then generally they come under the one of the type of the defenses. The accusation made in good faith to the authorized person. So if you make an accusation in a good faith to the other person, that is the accusation made in a good faith against the person who has lawful authority, or the person is not a amount to defamation. It is necessary for the person making allegation to prove that his allegations were true, but he must prove that there was a reasonable ground for him to believe in the allegation. If a person signs a petition to the chairman of the Lakku Development Authority against the defective construction of the houses, along with the several other residents of the locality, he can say to have acted in good faith, but there is no amount to defamation. Let us see the difference between the civil defamation and the criminal defamation. And come to the matter of the left-hand side, the defamation as a tort and the defamation as a crime. So let us see there is a difference. It is a civil wrong, defamation of as a tort, and the defamation of a crime is a criminal wrong, which is bearable and non-cognizable and compoundable. Means it can be compromised. So in the second distinction, we can see it is based on the tort law, an area of law which has no statute to define the wrongs and relies upon only the case law defining wrongs. When judgment law would be there in the second two, and the defamation as a tort. When you come to the right hand side, defamation as a crime, it has been defined as an offense under section 499 of the criminal IPC. Punishment is given over the 500 Indian Penal Code 1872. Of course, the privileged communication is given in section 122 of the Evidence Act would be there, and Article 19(1)(a) and Article 19, sub-article 2 also give the there is a constitutional provision to say that some of the restriction they put it over there. Okay, number 3, it provides a redressal to the plaintiff by awarding the damages in the form of the monetary compensation from the accused, the tort. But in the right hand side, the criminal side, it seeks to punish the offender, send a message of the society to commit such offense. Number 4, damages are awarded on the basis of the probabilities. Probabilities the damages are awarded. Here, the offenses of defamation has to be established beyond a reasonable doubt because it's a criminal wrong. That's why we can say that beyond a reasonable doubt. That is the wording that he used in the criminal side. Yes, number 5, it is generally a slow process to seek a relief in India. Yes, it takes a civil wrong, it takes a long time. The plaintiff can move a criminal court and ask the offender to take the cognizance of the complaint. Of course, the criminal cases were done and I don't say in a hurry manner, it will not take that much a long time when you compare with the civil cases. Number 6, any person found guilty can be penalized only by making pay damages. Here the compensation is the form of a damages, monetary compensation will be paid in the tort of defamation. But in the crime, a person found guilty can be punished with the imprisonment up to 2 years and fine, or with the both also, he can be punished. So these are the differences. These are the differences between the tort of defamation and crime as a defamation. The distinction that we have seen it. Now let us see the conclusion. Reputation is an asset, and each and every one, any damage is to such asset can be legally dealt with, and defamation laws have been enacted to prevent the person maliciously using the right to freedom of speech and expression. So let us these are the things. Then we will come to the Indian law has a rightly not made any distinction between a libel and slander. I told you that there is no such a distinction in Indian law regarding the libel and slander. Both are criminal wrongs at Article 499 of the IPC, following the 10 exceptions under it. Otherwise, there should have been chances for the committing the slander and escaping from the laws, that there is no written publication of the matter. So that way also we can make it out. Then another point is intentional act of the defamation is also punished and imprisonment for which prohibits the defamation of a person with a malice intention. Malice is there. At that instance, punishment will be more with the imprisonment, and the defamation law is also constitutional and reasonable restriction made over there. Like I told you in the Article 19.1, Clause A, you do have the freedom of speech and expression, but simultaneously it is also mentioned in the Article 19, Subarticle 2, a reasonable restrictions. However, it is no defamation if the act done fall within the exception provided under it. Over the 71 years of the independence, there has been a numerous cases of defamation, and the court has interpreted, and each case of the utmost care and their precedents. So, what I want to say is the court has stated in various cases that the ambit of the freedom of speech and expression, that is a sacrosanct, but is not absolute, we can say. It is said that the right to life under the Article 21 include the right to reputation of a person. I repeat, the apex court has stated in various cases that the ambit of the freedom of speech and expression is in a sacrosanct, but it is not absolute. It also said that the right to life under the Article 21 include the right to reputation of a person, and it cannot be violated at the cost of the freedom of speech of another. So these are the things where we can make it out in the conclusion. And generally there is a long question, sometimes long question and a short question also appeared over there, and we have to make it out. But one thing which is very much clear, so clearly we written with the examples and with the case laws, because tort law is nothing but the multiplication of the case laws. And another way also we can say the tort law is the product of the case laws, so man-made law. So every point that you are supposed to say a case law will be cited over there. At least the first name should be written over there. If you remember the both the plaintiff and defendant, or appellant and the respondent, and you have to write exactly, but don't create your own case law like Rangama versus Sayama case law. That is the latest case law, and given in the 2021 by the state of Telangana High Court, because every examiner knows what are the latest case laws would be there in particular regard. So suppose if he doesn't know at the time, then he can refer whether such a case law is cited over there or not. And you cannot try to make a fool to the examiner, because if you try to make him, and he will try to that what he will do it, because you are deceiving him, so he will give the punishment to you. So in that way that you are not supposed to do it. With this I will stop it. In the next tomorrow I am going to take the same timings at 10 o'clock to 10:50, and tomorrow topic is nuisance, but I think that it will take 26th as well as 27th. If possible, I can keep the class in the evening also, if everything goes well and if your presence is there. With this, I will try to stop it. Thank you very much for patient listening, and let you end up this meeting.